This is a special report from ABC News Digital.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Pfeffler in New York with this ABC News Digital special report. President Obama is about to introduce the new head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, who has actually been on the job for about 2 years. But this morning, Vice President Joe Biden, on the left there, presiding over the swearing-in ceremony of Richard Cordray as director of the agency, and Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius holding the Bible for the ceremony. This day has been a long time coming for Cordray, overcoming a lengthy filibuster by Senate Republicans. I want to bring in ABC's Mary Bruce outside the White House this morning. Mary, I know that it is very warm down there, so I really appreciate you being with us today. A big announcement, though, today. It's been a long time coming for the Republicans blocking this nomination.
Hi, Dan. That's right. It has been a long time coming. After a deal was reached yesterday, the Senate finally confirmed Richard Cordray. And as you mentioned, it's been 2 years in the making. The president first nominated him 2 years ago for this position, but Republicans held up that nomination. Now, this had more to do with the structure of this new agency, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It actually had very little, if nothing, to do with Cordray himself. But after a deal was reached yesterday, they finally confirmed him, and he will now be taking this position permanently. The president had put him in the post temporarily last year, but that was only going to last so long, and so now he will permanently take that position as of today.
One of the things that I had read was the fact that some of the Republicans that were blocking this nomination wanted, in fact, the structure of the actual leadership to be changed, that they necessarily didn't want one person to be director, that they wanted a board of directors. Is that correct?
That's right. Their objections had everything to do with the structure of the agency, the oversight of the agency. They actually objected to it even being called an agency at all. So this had, unlike a lot of other nominations that are held up, this had nothing to do with Cordray himself and really everything to do with the existence of this bureau itself. So now not only does this solidify Cordray in the position today that he's been officially confirmed, but it also solidifies the agency going forward.
Now, this was one of 7 nominations that have been held up recently, and as we had mentioned and have been reporting on, earlier this week, Democrats had been threatened to use a so-called nuclear option, where it would require only a simple majority, 51 votes, to pass these nominations that were put up by the president. That was averted from this negotiation that was worked out yesterday. But now, with the confirmation of Richard Cordray, does it affect any of those other nominations that have been put up?
Absolutely. This affects 7 different nominations for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the National Labor Relations Board. As you mentioned, the Senate averted really a political meltdown yesterday when Democrats agreed that they would keep in place the existing filibuster rules in exchange for Republicans agreeing to let these nominations go forward, to agree to vote on these nominations. And now, as part of that, these 7 people will finally have a chance to take on these positions after much delay in the Senate.
So, and the question sort of is begged that how was Cordray able to stay on the job for so long without actually being confirmed?
Well, the president used one of the tools in his tool belt known as a recess appointment, which means that he went ahead and put him in the position, but it was only temporary, and that was going to run out essentially later this summer. So the Senate did have to act soon if they wanted to see Cordray in the position permanently.
And I guess it then, of course, leads to the next question is how exactly does the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau operate? What is it going to do for the everyday American, whether it be for their mortgages, whether it be for their credit card payments?
This is a new agency that the president and this administration created in 2008 after the financial crisis, and it's intended to look out for the average American, to look out for consumers when it comes to mortgages, to their credit cards, to other financial protections, to make sure that they're safe and that they have the federal government looking out for their best interest.
And you can see on the shot there on the right, you can see inside the White House there, the woman in pink is a senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren, the senior senator there. And Mary, she was really the architect behind this agency.
That's right. This agency was really her baby. She came up with the idea for this agency. And many people were a little shocked when she wasn't given the position to lead it. But the president and the administration felt that Richard Cordray was the best pick for it. And obviously, as you mentioned, Elizabeth Warren has gone on to bigger and better things as well.
Exactly. And she had mentioned, in fact, in a lengthy article in 2007, in fact, that there was more protection provided for a consumer buying a toaster oven than it was actually getting a mortgage. And that was what really caught the president's attention in wanting to put further regulations in place and then, of course, creating this agency as well. And I wonder, Mary, if you could talk a little bit to the point that, and everyone taking to their feet now, the president about to make his way into the room. Mary, I'll get to you in just a moment, but first, let's go to the president making his way to the podium now.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Please have a seat. Please have a seat. Well, for decades, the middle class in this country was the engine that powered the economy, and that allowed us to all grow together. Hard work paid off, responsibility was rewarded. It was that basic bargain that made this country great, that no matter who you are, where you came from, you could make it if you put in enough blood, sweat, and tears. But over time, a winner-take-all philosophy began to take hold, and it delivered huge rewards to those at the very top, but left everybody else working harder and harder just to stay afloat. A lot of families took on more debt just to keep up. Mortgages were sold that people really didn't understand and in some cases couldn't afford. Financial sector was able to make huge bets with other people's money, and that strain of irresponsibility eventually came crashing down on all of us. Now, I ran for president to restore that basic bargain. I ran because I believe that our economy works best not from the top down, but from the middle out and from the bottom up, where you've got a rising, thriving middle class and ladders of opportunity for everybody. So 4 years ago, even as we were working on restoring the economy and dealing with the immediate crisis, we also wanted to figure out how do we set new rules for the road to make sure that a few bad apples in the financial sector couldn't break the law or cheat consumers or put the entire economy at risk. And I was fortunate, even when I was running for president, to have some friends like Elizabeth Warren, who had already done a lot of academic work on this and had a whole series of ideas about how we might start making sure that consumers were treated better, and as a consequence, take some of the risk out of the system. And because of those conversations and that work, and because of some terrific efforts by other members in Congress, we were able, for the first time in history, to get a consumer watchdog on the job, to look out for the interests of everyday Americans. And I am very proud to say that last night, Richard Cordray was finally confirmed by the United States Senate to keep serving as America's consumer watchdog and as the director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So we're very pleased about that. Good. I first nominated Rich for this position 2 years ago this week. He was eminently qualified. He had the support of Democrats and Republicans from across the country. A majority of state attorneys general from both parties, Rich's former colleagues, called on him to be confirmed. And for 2 years, Republicans in the Senate refused to give Rich a simple yes or no vote. Not because they didn't think he was the right person for the job, but because they didn't like the law that set up the consumer watchdog in the first place. But without a director in place, the CFPB would have been severely hampered. And the CFPB wasn't able to give consumers the information they needed to make good, informed decisions. Folks in the financial system who were doing the right thing didn't have much certainty or clear rules of the road. And the CFPB didn't have all the tools it needed to protect consumers against mortgage brokers or credit reporting agencies or debt collectors who were taking advantage of ordinary Americans. As a consequence, last year I took steps on my own to temporarily appoint Richard so he could get to work on their behalf. And Americans everywhere are better off because he did. And thanks to not only Rich, but his terrific team, I know many are represented here, we've made real strides, even despite the fact that the agency was hampered by the confirmation process. And I would argue that part of the reason we were able to finally get Rich confirmed today is because he's shown through his leadership and because of the very hard work that everybody at the CFPB has already done, that this is making a difference in the lives of the American people, a positive difference day in, day out. It's hard to argue with success. So yesterday, Richard was officially confirmed. I want to thank senators from both parties, including Senator Reid, Senator McConnell, Senator McCain, for coming together to help get Rich confirmed. And obviously Elizabeth, who wasn't a senator when she thought this up, but is now a senator, she was poking and prodding people for a long time to help make it happen. Senator Reid's leadership in particular was obviously instrumental in getting this done, and I couldn't be more grateful to him. And together, we're giving Americans a guarantee that the protections they enjoy today will still be around next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and for years to come. While we're on the topic of nominations, I also want to thank the Senate for agreeing to give my other nominees who've waited far too long the votes that they deserve. These are all highly qualified men and women who are just ready to go to work for the American people, for students and for seniors, for veterans, for middle-class families. Special interests, they'll always have their lobbyists. They'll always have the capacity to tilt the system in their favor, but middle-class folks deserve leaders who are going to stand up for them as well on a day-to-day basis in the trenches. So let me use this opportunity to remind people of what the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau under Rich's leadership can do and has done already, even in some difficult circumstances. Today, if you want to take out a mortgage or a student loan or a payday loan, or you've got a credit reporting agency or debt collector who's causing you problems, maybe they're not playing by the rules, maybe they're taking advantage of you, you have somewhere to go. The CFPB has already addressed more than 175,000 complaints from all across the nation, giving people an advocate who is working with them when they're dealing with these financial institutions that may not always be thinking about consumers first. Today, as part of the CFPB's Know Before You Owe efforts, students and their parents can get a simple report with the information they need before taking out student loans. And more than 700 colleges have joined to make this information clear and transparent. It's making a difference. And by the way, if you've noticed that some credit card forms are becoming easier to understand than they used to be, that's because of the work of Rich's team and other folks across this administration have done to make sure that people understand the kinds of debts that they're taking on through their credit cards. Today, veterans have access to tools that they need to defend against dishonest lenders and mortgage brokers who try to prey on them when they come home from serving their country. Today, seniors are better protected from someone who sees their homes or their retirement savings as an easy target for get-rich-quick schemes. And thanks to the hard work of folks at the CFPB, so far 6 million Americans have gotten more than $400 million in refunds from companies that engaged in unscrupulous practices. So this is not just some abstract theoretical exercise. Families, many of them hard-pressed, have money in their pockets. Maybe in some cases saved a home, or were able to send their kids to college because of the work that Rich and his team is doing right now. And that's money that oftentimes families didn't have the power to recover before. So Americans are better off because of what Rich has done as our consumer watchdog, and his outstanding team is doing each and every day. And by the way, that's just the tangible benefits that we know of, that $400 million in refunds. But part of what happens is when you've got a watchdog, people don't try as many things. And everybody starts tightening up their practices, and because they know somebody's watching. And so that has ripple effects throughout our economy. So Americans everywhere are better off because of the work that these folks have done. And now that Rich has gotten the yes or no vote he deserved, businesses and consumers have more certainty than they did before that this will continue. So we've come a long way over the last 4.5 years. Our economy is growing. Our businesses have created 7.2 million new jobs over the past 40 months. We've locked in new safeguards to protect against another crisis, and we are making sure that we are doing everything we can to change the incentives inside the financial system and try to end taxpayer-funded bailouts for good. And even though more work remains, our system is fairer and it's more sound than it was when the crisis hit. Of course, we've still got a long way to go to restore that basic bargain, to restore that sense of security that too many middle-class families still are fighting to rebuild. But if we just keep letting people like Rich do their jobs, if we let all these incredible young people know that you're going to keep on going for a long time, you're building something that it will last beyond our government service and will be providing protections for generations to come. And if we keep focused on that North Star, a rising, thriving middle class, an economy where prosperity is broad-based, then I'm confident that we're ultimately going to get to where we need to go. So I want to thank everybody, and I just want to give Rich a quick chance to say something.
Thank you. I want to thank the President, this President in particular, who has believed in us from the beginning. I want to thank the Senate and the Senators for the chance to persevere and be confirmed as the director of this Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's all I ever asked for, all I ever worked for, was to have a chance to have an up or down vote on the merits, and I thank them for that. For nearly 2 years, as the President indicated, we have been focused on making consumer finance markets work better for the American people. Today's action, I was sworn in by the Vice President this morning, and the Senate confirmation means that there will be certainty for those markets and for the industries we oversee. For me, it also reaffirms that our central responsibility is to stand on the side of consumers and see that they're treated fairly, just as the President described it. It's something that people deserve. It's something that they want and need, and we're there to try to provide it. We will continue that essential work, and each one of us, those of us here and those of us in Washington and around the country who work for this new Consumer Bureau, including most especially myself, we're grateful for the opportunity that you've given us to serve our country in this important way. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
And we've been watching the announcement there of the President announcing Richard Cordray as the head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. His nomination confirmed this morning, and he was sworn in by Vice President Joe Biden just before 10 o'clock this morning. A long and lengthy process. He's been on the job essentially for the past 2 years. He was put in place from a recessed appointment by President Obama, and you can see the President is now shaking hands with Senator Elizabeth Warren, the architect for this agency, this government watchdog that will enact regulations and further explanations for exactly how consumers go about their lending and borrowing. Credit card companies, small businesses, banks, financial institutions, all those interactions that take place from mortgages to credit card payments to student loans, all of those transactions being looked at now by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And you can see as the ceremony is getting ready to wrap up, outside the White House is ABC's Mary Bruce, who is standing by. And Mary, the President saying today, giving a bit of a shout out to some of the Republicans that had broke through that filibuster, Senator McCain in particular.
That's right. This was one of those incredibly rare moments of bipartisanship in Washington, something that we don't see here very often, especially not these days. Senator McCain, who of course was President Obama's political opponent in 2008, broke party ranks, broke with his own party to help broker and negotiate this deal with Leader Reid and McConnell. And this, the president would like to see this go forward. We don't, how long this bipartisanship will last is yet to be determined, but it is certainly an optimistic sign that this is still possible. The Republicans and Democrats can still come together to broker this kind of deal. And
there were some of the details that the president had laid out this morning about what Mr. Cordray has already done with the CFPB and what is expected then now that his nomination is in place. Were we surprised to find that there didn't seem to be a lot of details as far as how this position is going to change as far as him actually being confirmed and officially in the position?
Well, as you mentioned, he has been doing the job already sort of unofficially for a year before he was permanently confirmed today. So in a sense, it's business as usual for Richard Cordray, but now he can really get to work. And this agency, now that they don't have these resistance from Republicans looming over their heads, can really now get to work. This solidifies this agency going forward and means that Americans now have this permanent consumer watchdog, this permanent advocate looking out for their rights when it comes to lenders and mortgages and credit card companies. And so it gives Americans a place to turn when they're looking for help.
One of the things that Senator Elizabeth Warren had said was that regulation seemed to be an epithet in Washington, D.C. following the Reagan years, and that when she wrote this paper in 2007, that proposing any kind of an agency like this was certainly going to be something that was going to be very difficult for both sides to be able to come to grips to and to be able to understand kind of the logistics and how each party would accept to it. But now it must be this morning a bit of a relief and sort of a congratulations for her that, in fact, she has been pushing and pursuing this for such a great period of time, that there is now a head of this department, this agency that she has been trying to formulate.
There's absolutely a big collective sigh of relief here. It's no small feat to create an entirely new agency, and that's something that this administration has now done and has cleared a lot of hurdles to do so. I think a lot of what we heard from the president there was sort of touting this legislative victory that he's having. We saw him giving some cheers, some high fives, and shaking hands at the end there. This is definitely a big relief for him and a political victory as well.
All right, ABC's Mary Bruce outside the White House. Mary, thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate that. Of course, we have a complete wrap-up on abcnews.com on Richard Cordray being installed as the director for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. For now, I'm Dan Kleffler in New York with this ABC News Digital Special Report.
This has been a special report from ABC News Digital.